What exactly is a blog? On this podcast, Bryan and Nicolette chat about blogging. How do you get started? Well, there are two things to think about. They'll go through them. Don't worry. But you've got to listen in to find out. Oh, and they talk about birdwatching too. How random, right? And if you like the randomness inside their minds, subscribe to their YouTube channel.
I want to start a blog, but where do I begin? So, and this can be an individual, this can be a company, this can be, a doctor or whatever, I mean, a friend of mine, she wants to start a website with content, for a nutritional product she sells, it's anybody. And a lot of people don't know what to do, where do I even start? And so it's really, there's a lot to think about, but it's really simpler than people make it out to be. That's my belief.
Yeah, I think there's really two things you got to think about, right? There's two pieces. First, what platform are you using? So what CMS are you using? Are you going to use WordPress? Are you going to use Wix? Are you going to use something that's self-hosted?
Or something like that, right?
Right, if you're trying to sell stuff, it becomes a totally different thing, right? But if you're just here's a blog on, I love birds, and I'm going to write about I don't even know what a person that watches birds is called, but I'm going to, I'm just looking. A bird watcher, yeah. So the only reason I pick birds is I have a statue of a crow on my desk, so I just saw it. But my point is, so you're going to write this, you're going to write this blog about bird watching, right? And so what platform are you going to use? That's the first thing. You got to ask yourself, am I going to use something that, am I going to self-host, or am I going to use, something like, I may do the blog, but I may do it as like a Tumblr, or even though Tumblr is sort of fallen, but I may do it as like a Tumblr. Right. I know. It's just a bad example. Or, but you get my point. Like, you could actually do these hosted blogs versus actually doing, or even like a Facebook group or whatever, right?
Or even like a Medium, right? Like, because a lot of people use Medium as a platform to produce their content.
Exactly. That's a good one. Versus a self-hosted, where you're going to go and you're going to install WordPress and self-host it. So I think that's the first thing people have to decide. And I think, that happens. I get that question all the time. I think we made a video on it a while ago about another person that was selling sort of supplements, and they were really asking, they want to do an online shop. And what's really the best thing? Is it WordPress? Is it Shopify? Is it, do you know what I mean? X, Y, and Z. And I think it really depends on what you're doing. If you're truly selling product, I mean, I would go with, Shopify or something like that, or Big Cartel, or, pick one of them. And basically you have the availability to do a blog. If your site is just a blog, it's always good to go with something that's really CMS driven, such as like a WordPress. But I think you got to look at not just what you're doing now, but your intent down the road. So I think that's the first one, really deciding what platform you want to use. I think the second part, in my opinion, is really your content piece. And that's, I'm assuming where you were coming from, but I think it's your content piece. Like, what are you going to write about? What's the frequency? Like, people don't understand how they really connect to their audience. They just usually, if you're truly starting a blog, usually what happens as a person, you have a passion about, bird watching, and that's why you want to share that with other people who have that same general interest. Companies, it's a little bit different.
Do that? I mean, really, I feel like everybody out there is just creating blogs because they know they have to do that to sell other stuff. Do people just blog because they really just want to?
I think
maybe they do.
I do. I think there's tons of people that are passionate about a particular topic. I mean, you see it in many ways, right? I mean, it's not necessarily always like I have a blog, like I have this website. Some people go to that extreme. Other people use things that are really simple, like YouTube, and I'm just going to keep making videos on, bird watching, or, pick the topic, right? And so it just depends, but it's all sort of the same concept. You're actually, and that's why I used that really bad example before of Tumblr, but you're creating content to sort of be inside of another platform, right? And so it doesn't even matter, I think it's the same concept of whatever they're passionate about, or they want to make content on, or they, whether it's a company, they're using these platforms to do it. So it sort of all comes down to content when you look at it. I mean,
and LinkedIn. I just had a thought. A lot of people are using LinkedIn's publishing platform as a way to, in a little higher level. But I mean, that's instead of having a website, and they're leveraging the LinkedIn verse, as instead of creating their own website and having to,
and maybe that's what it. And maybe that's what it really is when you're asking the question, do people really blog? I think it depends on how you define blog, right? So to me, a blog is little short thoughts about a given topic that are usually somewhat related. Like that's, I don't know how you define it, but in my mind, that's sort of how a blog's defined. And originally, at the, I'm going to say the beginning of the internet, it was like that personal thing, where it's like, I like birdwatching and I'm going to create a site on birdwatching, where now it's really expanded out into people using various different channels to aggregate audience, whether it's back to their site or their blog, or
I just don't like that word blog. I prefer, it's a website. I mean, that's
yeah, it's sort of an old word. I mean, in many ways, well, at least in terms of like, internet context, right?
People still use it.
No, people use it, but I mean, a blog to me is almost like what a column was to a newspaper. It was, here's my personal opinion about something going on in the industry. Here's my diary. Yeah, I mean, that's what it was. It was when you used to read those, columnists back in the day, that were publishing in newspapers, it's sort of the same thing. It's sort of their thoughts on a given topic. And that's to me what a blog is. So it gets interesting when companies define things as blogs, because a lot of times what they're really talking about is they're talking about a basic article, what we would define as a basic article or an article. They're not really a blog. It's not like so-and-so at such company, is expressing their
right. Those are the companies. Unless you're like a very small 2-person company and you have your own product and now you're just journeying, you're talking about your journey and your experience with this product. I mean, I guess you could call it a blog then, that might work.
Right. I think what we're really discovering is the definition of a blog is not very standard, and I'm actually typing what is a blog. So let's actually find out what the definition is, because I think that's really, okay. So here's how it's defined: a regularly updated website or web page, typically run by an individual or small group, that is written in an informal and conversational style. So let's break that down. It's a website or page on a site. It's usually about the person or small group, right? And it's informal. So that's really what it is. So it almost, like, if you look at, and I don't even know who a columnist was in the Wall Street Journal, so don't leave any bad comments, people. I'm sure there still are, but I just don't really. It's not really my cup of tea, So, but my point is, that columnist is giving their opinion, right? On the Wall Street Journal, it's no different. It's usually this group that's giving their opinion. So, like this says, an individual or small group. So when you go if you talk about it in the context of a company, you have, say a Fortune 500 company, and they have a blog section. Shouldn't that be really the voice of their people? The people that work there, the voice of,
or
their presidents or their CEO, right? Exactly. Or even people that work there, because, a lot of times, big companies think like, oh, it needs to be the voice of, the CEO, he's our figurehead. But a lot of times, you look and you see these really innovative, charismatic people that are, not even close to that, C-suite level, that actually contribute a lot to what that company is or that company's culture, that should actually be put in front of the world or doing those columns, because they do have a lot to say. Because a lot of times, if you're working, let's say in engineering, sometimes it's the engineers or the creators of those products that have that super passion about whatever the next the next technology evolution. They're dedicating their entire work life sometimes around, some research in order to advance whatever to 5G or robotics or whatever the case is. So those are the people that sometimes are really passionate. And what's nice is, I'm going to go back to the definition. It's an informal style. So it's okay if sometimes it's not 100% perfect, right? And that's the thing about according to this definition about a blog. But I think what we're really talking about here is the definition of a blog and how
to
a lot
get started.
of people.
That's really, and we totally go off on those.
Yeah,
we were really how do you
trying to define it. Well, I think it was you that asked.
Probably.
What blog is such a, but okay. So let's go back. So really, two things with a blog: you got to choose a platform. That's number one, and that's based on your goal. Based on your goal, what are you trying to accomplish, in that blog, right? And what's your true outcome, and where do you see yourself in 2 years, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, if you can continue that. So you really need to look at that platform and make sure that platform, that CMS, that piece of software that's going to run your site is going to be suitable for where you are, what your technical skill is, and where do you want to go, right?
So if
and
you're
then
not
the next,
that technical, what do you think what should you do? If you're
I
an
think
individual.
it really, like if you're an individual and you got a GoDaddy account, or, they actually offer like these, WordPress instances where it gets installed through GoDaddy that are pretty straightforward for people to do things like that. You don't have to use GoDaddy. There are plenty of hosts out there, but they usually offer very simple CMSs that actually let you go and do that. If you want to blog and you want to sell stuff, I would recommend things like Shopify or Big Cartel, or even, things like Etsy actually let you put a blog in front of your online shop. Another instance of using a platform to do it. Yeah. They let you, no, well, it's not really a blog. They let you put content around it.
Really?
So. Yeah, you could put like shop updates and things like that. And then you have, there's so many things out there. And like we talked about, you could blog on LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean? In order to attract audience. Most people don't even realize that on LinkedIn, sometimes you have followers that aren't even connections. So it's like anything else where it's almost like, you're on Twitter, you're following people and people are following you, or, or Instagram, you pick, choose your social network. But what happens is the same thing works on LinkedIn. There are actually there's more people following you usually than you're actually connected to, because what happens is they start reading your content or whatever the case is, and they start following you. So I think
they don't like you that much. They just want to read your stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other. Yeah, I have this whole idea on a really good article about LinkedIn, but we'll talk about that later. But what was I going to say? So platforms, number one, or multiple platforms. What platforms and what channels are you using? Really, that's what we're talking about. And then second is, what's the other thing I think you really, when you start a blog, you really need to decide is, how often am I really going to write? How passionate am I about this topic? Because a lot of times, and we see this a lot, people are really passionate about a project. They start off, they get this great idea, where they it's in them, that's who they are. They're that bird watcher deep inside, and they want to write about bird watching. But what happens is it peters off over time. So, the other thing is the consistency in the content, and that's all different types of content. Make it simple on yourself. Keep it informal if you're doing a blog. Make videos. It's easy to whip out your phone and record some of these
video birds in the tree.
Right. Here's some, here's some, where I live, here's some seagulls and some crows. That's about it.
The audience is for something like that.
Yeah. Well, there's that. Did you ever see that chicken guy? The guy that, like, the chicken farmer guy? I forgot his name. He's like the chicken farmer. No. And he talks about raising chickens in suburban settings. But this guy's massive. So obviously if there's a interest in that, there's an interest in people, I don't know, taking pictures of.
I'm going to start a blog about raising an African tortoise in the city.
There you go. There you go. How do you raise tortoises in New York City?
I can do it.
Right, and there are people that are interested in that, because I guarantee you, in a city of 8 million people, there's going to be other people that are raising African tortoises inside of New York City. So, but you get my point. And then it's well, once you decide what it's about, what's the frequency? What's the type of content you can create? Are you going to create written content, video content? Are you going to also then go, and when you're doing that and creating it for your site, what are you also doing from the social sphere? Yeah. So are you going to then go and create short videos out of your videos to post on Instagram? There's so many things you could do, but I think that it comes down to two things: your platform and your content. and the frequency of that content. And that's what you need to decide. So if I was going to give someone advice that was just starting out, I want to start a blog, I say, think about your platform, think about how you're going to use it, and then think about your content, what you're going to be doing, and how often you're going to be updating it. Because you see also, I mean, there are certain things that need to be updated less. Like, so for instance, if you're a person. Mm-hmm.
I would even suggest before even publishing that site, having a few blog posts done ahead of time. Because
absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's like, all right, I rolled this out. There's one post on it. You know, it's all right. You know, but if you come out of the gate with a bunch of stuff, plus it gives you a break. You know, it gives you a chance to breathe a second, because, like you said, people are really good starters, and you know.
And I think what people need to realize is we do this all the time with content. You know, we're sometimes creating content. It doesn't necessarily mean you're posting it today. You know, you may go on you may take a trip to, I don't even know if there's a lot of birds in New Hampshire, so excuse me for my ignorance, everyone. But you may go to New Hampshire. What? Yeah, well, I don't know, like a whole bunch. I don't know where people that are bird watching go. I just pick New Hampshire randomly. You know, you can pick any state, but pick a state that has a lot of bird watching. You may take a week-long trip to New Hampshire and you may shoot 50 hours of video on birds, and you may take a whole bunch of pictures of birds, thousands of pictures. It doesn't mean you need to release that the second you get back from New Hampshire. You could spread that content out over time. Do you know what I mean? If it's different types of birds, you could go and here's some, here's like, once again, my ignorance, here's some cardinals, here's some blue jays, here's some crows, here's some seagulls,
Okay, by the way, the number one best bird watching place is southeastern Arizona.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
They got road runners, right? Those little things that speed along the ground.
I actually would like to see what's next on the list. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So
Cape May, New Jersey. That's right here. We could do that.
Yeah. So you get my point. Like, well, here living near the water, it's all seagulls, it's cranes, it's things like that. We see it's pigeons, right? It's pretty much the number one bird in New York City.
I'm not in the city, but yes, we have pigeons.
So, but yeah, we got some ducks. We got lots of ducks and geese over here. But that's my point. Like, it's really those things. Like, you could take that content, and it doesn't necessarily mean just because you took that trip to Arizona. Let's go with Arizona now, and you got a lot of footage, you got a lot of content, you created articles, you did all these other things. It doesn't mean you need to release it day one. You could spread that content out, and I think what happens is people have a tendency to dump it all at once. That one trip is one piece of content, or that one piece of, you spread that content out, use that content in multiple channels, repurpose it. We talk to people about that all the time. Repurposing content to different channels.
About repurposing content. So
there you go. So everyone, I'm going to shut up about repurposing content, and I think that's probably all I have to say on what I would besides very specific advice. I mean, every situation is so different. If someone came to us and they were like selling product, it'd be totally different advice. And, we do help companies build a lot of sites out there. So, feel free to, anyone out there that has some questions, feel free to, hit us up, send us an email, or, comment if you're watching this on YouTube or something, feel free to comment and let us know. We're very responsive to our audience. So.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Anything else on that?
No, I don't think so.